Have you ever driven down a lonely road late at night and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature outside? Tonight, I want to tell you a story that might make you think twice about who you stopped for. This is a story that has been whispered around Connecticut for decades, a chilling tale from the winter of 1980. Our story begins with David, a young salesman making his way home after a long day of appointments. The snow had been falling steadily for hours, blanketing the countryside in a pristine, almost eerie silence. The winding back roads were deserted, his headlights cutting a lonely path through the swirling flakes. It was well past midnight, and the world seemed to have gone to sleep, leaving him alone with the whisper of his tires on the snow-packed asphalt. As he rounded a sharp bend, his headlights caught something a figure standing by the side of the road. It was a young woman, shockingly underdressed for the brutal cold. She wore a simple, thin, white dress, the kind you might see at a summer party, not in the middle of a New England blizzard. Her long dark hair was dusted with snow, and she stood perfectly still, her thumb held out in the universal gesture of a hitchhiker. David's first thought was that her car must have broken down. No one would be out here on a night like this by choice. His conscience wouldn't let him just drive by and leave her to freeze. He slowed his car, the tires crunching softly as he pulled over to the shoulder. He rolled down the passenger side window, and a blast of frigid air rushed in. "Need a ride?" he asked, his voice sounding loud in the quiet night. "It's a terrible night to be stranded." The woman didn't say a word. She simply nodded, a faint, sad smile on her lips. She opened the door and slid into the passenger seat, bringing a wave of intense cold with her, a cold that seemed to seep right into the car's upholstery, a cold that went beyond the winter air. David felt a shiver run down his spine that had nothing to do with the open window. He closed his window and pulled back onto the road. "Where are you headed?" he asked, trying to make small talk. The woman just pointed a slender finger straight ahead down the road. "Just up there," she whispered. Her voice was soft, barely audible over the hum of the engine and the swish of the wipers. David glanced over at her. Her skin was incredibly pale, almost translucent in the dim glow of the dashboard lights. Her eyes were dark and seemed to hold a profound sadness. He felt an inexplicable sense of unease settle over him. The silence in the car became heavy, punctuated only by the rhythmic beat of the windshield wipers. He tried again. "My name's David. It's really dangerous to be out here. Did your car break down?" She turned her head slowly to look at him, her dark eyes seeming to look right through him. "I'm just trying to get home," she said, her voice a fragile whisper. They drove on in silence for another mile or so. The snow was coming down harder now, making it difficult to see. David was focused on the road, trying to navigate the treacherous conditions. He was about to ask her for more specific directions when he noticed the turnoff for a small, old cemetery just ahead. As they passed the cemetery gates, the woman spoke again, her voice a little stronger this time. "This is my stop." David glanced at the cemetery, confused. "Here. But there's nothing here but—" He trailed off as he turned to look at her. The passenger seat was empty. He slammed on the brakes, his car skidding to a halt in the middle of the road. His heart was pounding in his chest. He looked around wildly. The door hadn't opened. He hadn't heard a sound. She was just gone. He got out of the car, the freezing wind whipping at him, and looked around. There were no footprints in the fresh snow around his car, except for his own. It was as if she had never been there at all. Shaken and confused, David drove to the nearest town and stopped at an all-night diner to get a cup of coffee and try to calm his nerves. He told the weary-looking waitress what had happened, half expecting her to laugh at him. But she didn't laugh. Her face grew pale, and she looked at him with a mixture of fear and pity. "You picked her up, didn't you?" she said softly. "The girl in the white dress, out on Easton Road." David just stared at her, speechless. The waitress continued, her voice low. "You're not the first. Happens every few years. Always on a snowy night like this. They say her name was Sarah. She was on her way home from a dance back in the 50s. She lost control of her car on that same bend in the road. They found her the next morning. She died right there, by the side of the road, not far from the cemetery where she's buried." The next day, driven by a morbid curiosity he couldn't explain, David went to the library and looked through old newspaper archives. He found Italiano, a yellowed article from 1956. The headline read, "Local teen dies in tragic accident." And there was a picture, a grainy, black and white high school photo of a young woman with dark hair and sad eyes. It was her, the woman from his car. The experience haunted David. He tried to forget it, to rationalize it as a dream or a hallucination brought on by fatigue and the hypnotic effect of the falling snow. But he couldn't shake the feeling, the memory of that profound cold in those sorrowful eyes. Months passed. Winter thawed into spring, and spring blossomed into summer. David's life returned to normal, and the memory of that night began to fade, becoming more like a half-remembered nightmare than a real event. He'd even started to convince himself he'd imagined the whole thing. Then came a warm, humid night in August. David was driving home late again, this time with the windows down, enjoying the smell of summer rain on hot pavement. He was on that same stretch of road, Easton Road, though it looked completely different now, lush and green under the moonlight. As he approached the familiar bend, he saw her again. She was standing in the exact same spot, wearing the same thin white dress, which now looked ghostly in the hazy moonlight. His blood ran cold. This time, he didn't slow down. He couldn't. His foot pressed down on the accelerator, his mind screaming at him to just get away. He sped past her, his heart hammering against his ribs. He didn't dare look in his rearview mirror. He just needed to get home, to lock his doors and pretend this wasn't happening. He drove for what felt like an eternity, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Finally, he pulled into his own driveway, his body trembling. He cut the engine and sat there for a moment in the sudden silence, trying to catch his breath. The night was quiet, the only sound, the chirping of crickets. He took a deep, shaky breath. It was over. It was safe. He reached over to the passenger seat to grab his briefcase, and then he froze. He slowly lifted his head and looked in the rearview mirror. She was sitting in the back seat. Her face was pale, illuminated by the faint glow of a distant street lamp. Her dark, sorrowful eyes met his in the mirror. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She just looked at him, a silent, chilling passenger who had followed him home. He let out a cry and threw open his door, scrambling out of the car and stumbling backward onto his lawn. He stared at the back seat, his mind reeling with terror. And just as suddenly as she had appeared, she was gone. The back seat was empty. There was nothing there but the lingering, impossible cold and the faint, sweet scent of funeral flowers. David never drove down that road at night again. Some say, on cold, snowy nights in Connecticut, she's still out there, waiting for her next ride home. Thanks for listening to this chilling tale. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more strange and mysterious accounts, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments if you've ever had a spooky experience on a lonely road. Stay safe out there, and see you in the next video.